Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the first episode of Making Life More Better podcast, where we are empowering Black men who grew up without a father to live a godly, purpose driven life through faith, healing, and by sharing our stories. I'm Maurice Walker, your host. And as you can see, I am a Black man, and I did grow up without my father involved in my life because he made that choice to not be involved. And in this episode, I'm going to share with you the letter that I wrote to my father. But before then, I want to share a little bit um, about myself to kind of let you know where I am, how things came about. So, if you will allow me to do that. But if you're a Black man, if you're a man that's looking, you're tired of feeling unwanted, you're tired of feeling, why did this happen to me? What did I do to you? Um, you didn't teach me how to be a man. The different questions that you have. Um, you may be a young boy that's going through something, but you don't know what that something is. It's just something is not right. There's something within you that you can't even explain to anyone, including your mom. Including your mom, you can't even explain that to them. This podcast is for you. I feel you. I literally do. I've been there. I am there. This is a continued healing process for me. I could have chosen to do a podcast about basketball. I love basketball. I coach it. I referee. I can sit and talk about basketball all day long. But God didn't give me that sense of peace with choosing that route. And that's how I'm here. Because there are so many men, there's so many Black men that are suffering in silence, that want to talk but won't talk because you're afraid of what people are going to say, what people are going to think, the self-doubt, all of those things, the emotions that you have that comes along with this. I feel you. This podcast is for you. All right, so let me share a little about myself. Maurice Walker. I'm 56 years old, from a small town, country town, Hampton, South Carolina. Was raised by. I'm the oldest of three boys. My mom and my grandparents played a major role in help raising us. In fact, when I was younger, I thought my grandfather was my dad because he was the only male figure involved in my life like that on a consistent basis. Now, the street that we lived on, that I grew up on, it had my mom's house. Then my grandparents were right next door to my mom. Then my uncle, then another uncle. So I had my cousins there that lived on that same street. And then my other neighbors, Bishop Sanders, who was the bishop of the church that I grew up in. He and his wife, Mother Verna. Then we had the Frasers across the street, and Miss Smith. All of us, we were like family there on the street. But our grandparents played a major role. And you will probably hear throughout my podcast, a different episode, you'll probably hear their names. My grandfather is Mr. Israel Walker, and my grandmother is Miss Versie Mae Walker. And that name you may hear a lot because I was a grandmother's boy. I'm still a grandmother's boy until I die. My grandfather passed when I was in the eighth grade. My grandmother passed April 4th of 1996. She lost a battle with cancer. Again, they were major, a part of my life. Now, my father grew up, I grew up about 15 miles from where my father lived. And if he were to walk in now, I couldn't tell you if it was him or not. I couldn't. So growing up without a father, when I realized that he wasn't involved, even as a kid, um, when I was told that my grandfather was not my father, I something was going on within me that I didn't understand, didn't know, and because I was a kid, not knowing what that was, how to talk about it, how to explain it to anybody, it was just there, and it continued. And as I got older, meaning from middle school to high school, um, I was doing things. I started doing things out of, I don't know, wanting to do something. I took my first drink when I was in high school. I remember that day like it was yesterday when I took that first drink. And alcohol wasn't something that was um, filling that void. I didn't understand my emotions. I didn't understand what was going on until I became an adult. And I want to share this information with you to let you know like how I got to this point. Hopefully this is going to resonate with some brother that's going through this now and can identify what it is and what you're dealing with and how to start working with that. When I was coming up, I didn't know what it was. I couldn't identify it. So therefore, I could not deal with it. All I knew was whatever it was that was going on within me, it kept getting worse. And there was nothing that was filling that gap or whatever it was back then. It wasn't filling it. And I continued to do different things. The drinking started in high school, like maybe the ninth grade, and it got worse because I was trying to feel something and it didn't happen. So for those that are going through those things, I feel you, I understand you, and hopefully this can help you out and get you on a path to where you can begin to heal. Now, when I became an adult, well, let me back up. In when I was in high school, I started playing basketball in the 8th grade after my grandfather passed. I believe if my grandfather hadn't passed, I wouldn't have played because I don't think he was going to let me play. But after he passed, I played basketball in the 8th grade. When I got to high school, I played varsity. I was the only freshman on the team that played varsity. So my coach became my coach, but he also became my father, not a father figure. Because again, there was something that was missing in my body or whatever it was that. And I didn't realize that until I was an adult, that I looked at my coach as not my father figure or just my coach, but like my father, because I wanted that. That's what I wanted. I didn't have that. So ended up getting a scholarship to go play college ball, went to Lander University. And I did have dreams of playing in the NBA because my main thing is I wanted to give my mom a better life. My mom was a single mom of 3 boys with the help of my grandparents. She did an awesome job at raising us. And I was fortunate enough to get a basketball scholarship. Went off to Salkehatchie first, Lander University, and graduated from college with a degree in business administration. Went overseas and played basketball in the Dominican Republic for a year. My grandmother was diagnosed with cancer. I was talking to her on a daily basis, and I came back home to be with her because when I talked to her every day, it was I didn't like what I was hearing. And yes, as I said earlier, I was a grandmother's boy. And I asked her one day, I said, "You want me to come back home?" She was like, "No, you're doing what you want to do." So, but I did. I ended up coming back home, staying with her. And I ended up going back to school, Lander, in 95. Was it 95? Yes, in 95. And my grandmother, she was like, "Why don't you be a teacher?" I'm like, "A teacher?" I had a degree in business, but I went back and got a second bachelor's degree in special education. So I've been in special education. This is my 27th year. So that's how I got on that route. But back in on April 4th of 96, my grandmother, she passed away. And in my adult life, there's been 3 times that I can remember where I reached out to my father, try to reach out to him. Like twice was at a family reunion, and he recognized me. I didn't recognize him. He ended up leaving the family reunion. One time we were in Florida. The young lady that I was dating at that time, we drove down to Florida. Someone was going to introduce me to my brother, which is his son. And we were at the park where the family reunion, the cookout, all that stuff was being held. I was walking toward to go speak to my brother, his son, and this lady said, "Tori, come on so we can come here for a second." So he ran over to where she was, and they ended up leaving the park because they realized who I was. They left from the park, went to the hotel, they packed up, and they drove back to South Carolina from Florida because I was at the family reunion. That was one time. So I have tried to reach out to him several times. 3 times, not including the letter that I am going to read to you that I wrote and sent him back in 2020. And each time that I reached out to him, it was like a new hurt. It was like a new pain. And I had to stop doing that to myself because I can't make someone do what they don't want to do. I can't do it. And when I shared my story or bits and pieces of my story, when I've shared that with people, different people, even some family members didn't even know that. The situation with my father not being, they knew my father wasn't involved, but didn't know the situation. And an example of that was we had our family reunion this year, and it was in Greenville. And I was sitting and talking to some of my cousins, and it came up. One of my cousins, I asked a question about my father, and come to find out, she and I are double related. On my grandfather's side, which is her dad's side, and that day I found out that we were related on her mother's side because of my father. So just sitting and having that conversation, and 2 of my other cousins didn't know anything about it. So I was talking with them and just explaining to them over the years what happened. And this is what usually happens when I share my story. Like, people that know me, it's like, how could he not have anything to do with you? And when I tell them that my father's a pastor, he pastors a church in Augusta, Georgia. And that makes people even more upset because how he's a preacher and he's not taking ownership of you as his only son, as his son, not his only son, but as his son. And I've heard that from my mom's side of the family, and I've heard that from his side of the family. His brothers, they treat me just like I'm their nephew. I'll go by and visit them. I'll see some of my cousins on my father's side. They, "Hey, cuz, what's going on?" So I get acknowledged as a family member from some of the ones on his side, except him. Definitely not him. So why am I sharing all this now? Because it's time. I went through a lot with this, with him not being involved in my life. I went through so many different emotions, and it affected every area of my life. And how I got to finding out how it affected my life was probably in my late 30s. I ended up on 19 different medicines and went to see my doctor. And he told me, he said, "Your body is giving you warning signs." Like, I had some crazy stuff going on. "Your body is giving you warning." He said, "You know what the first warning sign for a lot of black men?" I said, "No, sir, what's that?" He said, "Death." He said, "End up having an aneurysm, stroke, heart attack, and to take you out. That's their first time. That's their warning sign." You know how we find that out? Because when we do the autopsy, and we get the results back. He said, but your body is giving you warnings, and you got to heed to these warnings. You got to listen, because if you drop dead, that school is not going to stop. They'll get a substitute teacher to come in to sit in your class, and they might not even come to your funeral. But here you are worrying about missing a day from work. You didn't want to miss a day from work. I didn't want to miss a day from work because I had some rough kids, and I just felt bad. And I always told my kids, hey, if I'm not here, you better teach whoever the sub is, you better treat them better than you treat me. And y'all know y'all do not play with me. And I just didn't like missing work. But my doctor was the one that suggested I talk with someone. After he practically begged me for a few months, I finally gave in and made my first appointment. I made my first appointment to see a therapist. I used to call it a counselor. People said, why won't you say therapist? But I went in, and I remember my first session, I just felt so uncomfortable because I didn't know how it was going to go. She would ask me questions, I'll answer. And I think maybe on the third session, she was like, so you're just not going to, work with this process? And I answered the question. I said, but doc, I am answering the question. She said, yes, you do answer them, but they're like cut and dry. You don't elaborate on anything. And I remember that fourth session that I went in. And in that fourth session, she said, hey, Maurice, how's it going? I said, it's good. And she said, so why is it just good? And I will give her an answer. And then she would ask another question from my answer. And what I realized afterwards was each question that she asked, it led me to go deeper into me. Like they said, like when you're peeling the layers of an onion, it led me to go deeper within me, which I didn't know that what was going on until I was on my way home. And it literally felt like I had finished playing 3 basketball games back to back to back. I was that tired, drained, physically, emotionally, and it felt like spiritually. And our next session, I told her that. I was like, doc, I was so tired and drained from that first session. She said, because Maurice, you're finally like opening up. I said, I never knew that I was not opening up. And from the sessions with my therapist, and she would tell me as we went along from my sessions, everything led back to my father not being involved in my life. Everything led back to my father not being involved in my life. And it affected every area of my life. Me having self-doubt, the fear of abandonment, being left. Because when my grandfather died, I remember I felt like he left me. I was a little upset with him. I felt like he left me. In fact, that morning that he passed away, I remember walking down the street and I sat on the side of the ditch. And Bishop Sanders, who was the bishop at the church that I grew up in, he, just like my grandparents as well, Bishop Sanders stopped his car, he got out, and he said, hey, it's going to be okay. You know your granddaddy left you with me. And I got you. With me and Sister Verna, which was his wife, Mother Verna, your granddaddy left you with me. And just hearing those words come from him just gave me some sense of comfort. And I remembered that. And learning that a lot of the things that I was dealing with and I was going through led back to my father not being involved in my life. It was crazy. And when I started learning those things, I had to start with therapy and praying and asking God's guidance in all of this. I had to start the process of healing because I had to teach myself how to be a man. I had to learn how to treat a woman through trial and error. I had no one to tell me or to show me how to treat a woman. The morals and values that I grew up with were the ones that my grandfather taught me before he passed away. And he died when I was in the 8th grade. Before he passed away, the morals and the values that he taught me, that really impacted my life in a positive way. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to read this letter to you. And some other episodes when I have guests, before I read this letter, yes, I'm kind of hesitant about reading it because when I look at this letter and read it, sometimes I don't make it through it. And like I said, this is a continued healing process for me. A lot of stuff can trigger different things. So bear with me. Dear Pastor Mo, I pray all is well with you and your family. I am so sorry for your loss of your wife. I hope and pray that you and Tori, I have y'all in my prayers. I'm Maurice Walker, the son of Rebecca Walker. I was told all of my life by my family and yours that you're my father. I've also been told that you said that I'm not your son. If that is the case, then you don't have to read the rest of my letter. I'm writing to apologize to you. I blame you for so many things because you were not involved in my life. That was not fair to you. All I ever wanted was to get to know you. There's so much I want to talk with you about. I have also accepted the fact that it may not happen. If you find it in your heart, I still would love to talk to you. If not, I understand. But I want you to know that I love you. Again, I am sorry for the loss of your wife. I pray that God continues to comfort you and Tori. If you want to reach out, here's my information. I would love to talk with you. Blessings, Maurice Walker. And I put my address and I said, I love you. And I also put a picture of me so he can see who I am. And this is the letter. I took a picture of the letter after I wrote the letter. That suggestion came from my pastor about writing the letter. I didn't do it immediately. In fact, it was a couple of years later that I did that, because when he suggested that I write the letter, my thing was, was my father going to read it? I want to know if he was going to read it. How would I know that if he was going to read it? Nobody can give me a idea or something that I can do that I haven't thought about already. Some of you that's watching this, you're like, why don't you go to his church? I thought about that as well, going and sitting up in his church. But then I would always feel bad for him. And when I would tell people that, why are you feeling bad for him? The way he treated you or not being involved in your life? I said, I do. I don't want to show up at his church and embarrass him by me being there. I've thought of the different things that I could do. I've had friends, family members, like, hey, I'll go with you. He need to talk to you. I understand that. And my thing was, the other 3 times that I reached out to him and he walked away, I couldn't put myself through that again. Going to his church. Why should I have to make a man that helped created me talk to me? I used to question myself, like, what did I do? What did I do wrong? There were many nights I cried. There were many times that something would just trigger the relationship we didn't have, and it would affect not just my life, but the life of other people that was involved in my life. I've hurt people because of that. Not excusing it. I didn't know why I was the way that I was when I was a certain way. When I was dating and my emotions, everything is going fine, and then my emotions were just cut off. I didn't realize I was doing that. I didn't know why I was doing that. But through prayer and therapy, it was the fear of being abandoned. So I would bail out first emotionally because I felt like that person was going to bail on me, abandon me. And this is when I was even an adult. I told you I felt like my granddad left me. Like I took that personal. Like, what did I do to him? Why did he have to leave me? And that was in the early 80s. And when my grandmother passed, um, April 4th of 96, I felt the same thing with her. Why did she leave me? And that was selfish of me. Very selfish of me to think that. So for those men, black men, I feel you. I understand you. I know your pain. I know the thoughts that you have when you're by yourself. I know the thoughts that you have when you're laying up with someone, when you're laying by someone. I know the thoughts that you have when you're in a club, when you're drinking, and you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I still feeling empty? When you're around kids, I love kids. God blessed me with this. I love kids and elderly people. I can sit and talk with them all day. And I will get mad with God, like, why do you give me this heart for kids and I don't have any of my own? I don't have any biological kids of my own. I'm 56 years old, don't have any biological kids of my own. I used to get upset and mad with God because of that. You created me with this heart for kids, but I don't have any of my own. I thought I would be married, had 3 or 4 kids, and that didn't happen. Why am I going through all this hurt, this pain, and why can't I hate him? For a long time, I wanted to hate my father. I tried to hate my father. The harder I tried, the more I couldn't. Because there was something inside of me that still wanted to connect with him. Even after those times I reached out to him and he turned his back, something still wanted to connect. And I asked God, like, why? I don't want to feel like this. I don't want to. He doesn't want me. I don't want to feel that way towards him. So let me hate him. Didn't happen. He didn't let me do that. I identify with me being in the education system. I see myself in a lot of these young black males, young black boys, coming out of a single parent home and their father's not involved in their life. I have a young kid that I'm working with now. I've been working with him since he was, he's in the 5th grade this year. I've been working with him since he was pre-K. I just saw a picture of him last night. That's why I'm laughing, this picture, when he had on his pamper. He done took his pants off, had his pamper, and it was during COVID. And that's how I met this kid at school. He was in my class. And over the years, we become like family to me because he just met my mom. I'll have to go into that a little later, but he has a relationship with my mom. And I asked his mom this. I said, do you mind if I ask you a question? I said, I'm not trying to get involved. If I'm being nosy, said Coach Walker, that's none of your business. She said, what's that? I said, is his father involved? She said, no. You are the closest thing that he has as a father. So I see these young black boys because I connect with them. The feelings that they're having that they don't even realize and understand, I connect with those feelings because I had those feelings. I don't want another black boy, man, if I can help it, to go through the things that I went through with this without having a father in my life. If I can share my story, parts of my story, and I can sit here probably for the rest of the day talking about it and give you different stories after story after story after story. And moms, I thank you so much for being mom. But there are going to be some things that your son is not going to tell you when it comes to that. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't share a lot with my mom. We never talked about it. My mom never said anything bad about my father growing up my entire life. His name came up, the situation came up about 3 years ago. I was on my way home. I stopped to see my uncle, my father's brother. I stopped by to see him. And he and I are pretty close. I go by there and see him, talk to his wife, his kids. All of them are adults. And he shared with me, he said, "Bo, I don't know what's my brother. I don't get it. I just don't get it." He told us to leave him alone because you're not his son. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. He said, you act like him. You walk like him. He said, well, I don't see why he doesn't see that. But my uncle told me that my father, about 2-3 years ago, said that I'm not his son. So when I got home to my mom, she could tell something was wrong. And I ended up telling her. And she said, I feel sorry for him. And she was like, well, why won't he take a test, a DNA test? Again, with that, why make a man do what he don't want to do? If he's been pushing me away, denying and saying that I'm not his son, if he's been doing that, and him taking a DNA test, it can prove that it is. And what? That's probably still not going to change how he feels. It's still not going to change his heart. It could. I don't think it will. That's just my feelings, how I feel about it. That was the first time she and I talked about it, my father. His age, how much older, the age difference between them. I never knew any of that. That was my first time. My mom never said anything negative about him at all. So for those that watching this video, I understand where you are. I have some guests that I will have on, some black men that, like myself, had to experience this and how they're dealing with it, how they're thriving. And each one that I've asked about, and I told them about the podcast, and I was doing the podcast. One is a real close friend of mine. We grew up high school ball together, and I called him a couple of months ago. I called him. I said, "Oh man," I said, "I thought about something about 2 months ago." He said, "What's that?" I said, "The five of us. There were five of us that hung together. We were close, and we used to call ourselves the Five Horsemen." I said, the five of us, did you realize the five of us that hung together, none of us had a father in the house? And he was like, really? He said, you're right. None of us had a father in the house. I said, I don't know why I thought about that, but I did. And I said, the reason why I'm asking, the reason why I'm calling you is I'm doing a podcast. And the podcast is about black men who grew up without a father in their home. and empowering them to live a godly, purpose-driven life through faith, healing, and sharing our stories. And I said, I would love for you to be a guest. He said, oh, let's do it. Absolutely. I would love to be on that. And he just started talking. And our stories are similar, but we never knew that because we never talked about it. As much as we hung out in high school, that never came up. We never talked about it. So he's going to be one of the guests. I have some other friends that when I asked them, without any hesitation, they were like, yes, I would love to do that. I need to do that. A couple of my former basketball players, I share with them, Coach, let me get on. I said, that's something that you want to talk about? Yeah, I need to talk about it. And that says a lot to me that a lot of men are dealing with this and they're not talking about it. They don't know how to talk about it. Me talking about it like this, the way that I'm talking about it, I was sitting like, how am I going to say this? What order am I going to put this in? And God was like, just get on and talk. Don't worry about all of that. It'll happen. It'll come. The ones that are supposed to hear from you, that are supposed to hear your voice, they will. The guests that you're going to have on, they're going to touch someone's life, change someone's life. It's continued healing for me. This is a process. Healing is a journey. It is a process. And years ago, God told me, he said, Maurice, your life is your life, but your life ain't just about you. Your story that you have, your testimony that you have, the things that I have delivered you through and from. And look at you. You're still here. You're still doing well. You're thriving. I know you hurt. I know you cried many nights. I know you were angry, upset, mad. You wanted to hate your father. I literally wanted to hate him because I felt like that was going to give me some sense of peace. But it hasn't. And I'm past wanting to feel that way towards him now. I do think about it. I do feel sorry for him because of what he could be thinking about. And in the letter, when I was telling him I was sorry to hear about him losing his wife, I found that out. Someone sent me a message on Facebook, and it said, and this a lady that I know, she's around my mom's age, and she sent it in Messenger. She said, Maurice, just sorry to hear about the loss in your family. And I'm thinking to myself, did somebody die I don't know about? And I'm thinking like, so I ended up calling my mom. I didn't come right out and ask my mom. I said, everything good? She said, yeah. I said, you heard anything about somebody dying in the family? She goes, no. I said, somebody sent me a message. And I told her who it was, sending condolences about the loss of my family. So come to find out, the death was my father's wife. This was during COVID. And I was told that both of them were in the hospital with COVID. She passed from COVID, said he almost died from COVID, but both of them was in the hospital. So that's how I found out about that, and that was on social media. So I'm looking forward to this podcast, having the guest on. It's time for us. It's time for black men, boys to start acknowledging, dealing with it, recognizing, healing, and living the life that God has for us. In my prayers, I've been praying that, Lord, help me to see myself the way that you see me. Help me to love myself the way that you love me, because I didn't see myself that way. I didn't love myself that way. And if I couldn't love myself that way, how was I going to love someone else? I did things to occupy my mind, so I didn't think about my father. I stayed busy. I played basketball, all to try to feel something I didn't know what was going on. So please share this podcast with someone that you think it could help, it could benefit. Some people are like, why is it black men? I said, because I'm a black man. I was raised by a black mom, so I know that. I'm not saying that it won't help anybody else. I'm sure there are other races that's dealing with the same thing. I'm not saying this is not for them. I pray that it does help. More besides black men. I honestly do. So this is the first episode of Making Life More Better podcast, where we are empowering black men who grew up without a father to live a godly, purpose-driven life through faith, healing, and sharing our stories. And you have a story as well, whether you're male or female, that somebody needs to hear. But they won't if you don't put it out there. So take care. God bless. Subscribe, share, comment. Let me know what you think. And I look forward to sharing, growing, healing through this podcast. Take care. God bless.